Euzu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Esselatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve ashabihi ve etba'ihi ve sellem. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullah. So, last week we started discussing this text, which was somewhat written in a poem-like structure. We read it once, it was 4 pages, and we talked about the intro part of the text. I just want to read the first part of it, like the first paragraph, and then I will ask for what was your take for last week's discussion, for those who were here last week. What was it? Was it 225? 225. So, O my sustainer, heedlessly not trusting in you, but in my own power and will, I cast an eye over the 6 aspects, searching for a cure for my ills, for my troubles. Alas, I could find no cure for them, and I understood it was being said to me, are your ills not sufficient as cure for you? This was the starting paragraph. We didn't discuss this specific sentence, but let's also discuss, before we go any further, what does it mean? Are your ills not sufficient as cure for you? If anybody can give a practical example for that, or what this might mean, that would be useful. This is question number 1. Question number 2, whomever wants to make a summary of like an overview of what we discussed last week, so that we can continue with the rest of the text today. Any volunteer? Mohammed Sial, you're looking at me. That means okay. Yeah, that's enough.
You want an example?
Whichever you would like to go with. Would you like to go with, are your troubles not sufficient as cure for you? If you would like to go with that, go with that. Like, what does this weird sentence mean?
I think an example that I could give is when it speaks of ills, these are things that Allah knows in a person has these deficiencies. So obviously Allah has he wants our development and everything that he's sending us in our life, whatever signs, whatever tests, whatever challenges, therefore our development. And so this is speaking of those tests, those things that we see as difficulties, the things that are stressors in our life, things that we don't like, that causes frustration. They're actually a gift from Allah, a mercy from him to address those specific weaknesses we have for our benefit. So an example could be if a person has say they have stubbornness, and then they're not patient in the way that they deal with people. This is a sort of spiritual illness that person has. So Allah might send for them, they may give them a child that tests their patience a lot, that shows them what this kind of stubbornness looks like, and makes them really develop that patience. So it might be the thing that like triggers that specific weakness the most. It's like isolating and targeting a disease in the body. So Allah he knows that this person needs to address this weakness in order to elevate themselves to reach the point that would get them to get closer to him, and this may be the barrier for that elevation. So he brings about these different either people, occasions, tests, trials, whatever they are, so that they can directly face and confront those weaknesses, and that becomes an opportunity for them to then get a cure for that ailment. So that is essentially the cure. The test is the cure for that ailment.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes. Very-
So what I'm kind of understanding, or what first comes to my mind, is that the troubles I face seem to lead me to a cure, but I feel like this sentence is, or this question is a bit different. Are they themselves not sufficient as cure for you? So meaning, like, if I get sick, like I would think of it as I'm sick, so now I need to search out for a cure or go search for a cure. But here it seems like it's asking, no, you're sick, and you being sick is a cure for you. So I guess that distinction is still not clear yet. Like it makes sense to me, like when you are facing some kind of trouble or illness, that is a motivation for you to go seek something out, as it seems to be for Imam Nursi here. But like seeing those things as cures in and of themselves right away still seems a bit hard for me to grasp.
You click on the power button once.
Thanks. Can I kind of like go off of what you were saying or answering? The way that I look at it, because you said you don't really see the cure.
If you
It
can
really-
speak up a little
Oh.
more. Yeah.
Sorry. You were saying you're not really seeing the cure, but I think in that situation, you need to think of what your cure actually is, or what Allah thinks your cure is. You might be thinking about it in a more physical aspect, like, oh yes, I'm thinking of my creator, yes, I'm getting healed. But I think in this aspect, the cure is remembering Allah. If it takes for you to be sick to remember Allah, that is your cure. If it takes for you to be blessed to remember Allah, that is your cure. So just remembering that the quote unquote cure at the end of the day is reflecting and going back to Allah, if that makes sense. I don't know, if that's what you meant. I don't know.
And I want to piggyback off what you said, Taslim, which is that taking into consideration the first line in that paragraph where he says, heedlessly not trusting in you, but in my own power and will, it makes me feel like the cure that is being mentioned here is not directly for the ills, but it's what you were saying, that your ills and your troubles, physical and otherwise, do remind you that, like, even by the definition of a problem, it's something you can't fix by yourself. So when these things happen, they should remind you of your neediness and the fact that you don't have control over everything as you wish. And especially with an ill, right? Like when you have a disease or an ailment, you definitely can't do anything, but you remember your creator. And I think that would be a cure for specifically not trusting in you, but in my own power. Or in that regard.
Jazakallah khairan. Very beautiful. Any other comments? There's a question here.
Do we have to see things in terms of cures and illnesses? Is there no other way to see or observe your reality or understand your reality?
This question seems like there's an answer there.
I mean, I'm asking. Do you have it?
And I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to see what the author is mentioning in here. Probably there is, but I find myself in the situation that he is describing, at least. Like, we are troubled in life with certain things. It could be either I'm not being successful in school, since people in here are students most. Either I'm not being as successful in school and I want to be successful, or I'm being successful but not able to find job, or I find job but not find satisfaction. Whatever it is, look around yourself and you will see people that are dissatisfied with something. So we are troubled by something. And when we are troubled by something, as very beautifully put by all the comments, we look for a solution for that problem elsewhere. Like the problem happens if it's about a job, then I say, oh, I couldn't find a job because maybe I didn't make enough applications, or I should have made a good network, and then I should send emails back and forth. A lot of things start kicking in. So in this case, it looks like I'm relying on something, as author started by saying, heedlessly, not trusting in you, but trusting in my own power and will. I start looking elsewhere as a solution because I would like to get out of this troublesome situation. But then he is saying that this troublesome situation was given to me, and apparently the problem that's being mentioned in here, the actual illness, the actual problem is me not trusting in him and trusting in my own power and own will. This is the actual problem. So the apparent problem is a cure for this actual problem. But there are two problems. One is the actual problem, which is me not trusting in the creator, but rather trusting in my power and will. And then there's this apparent problem, which is there, I'm not able to find a job. Generally speaking, I'm trying to solve my problem by calling friends and whatnot. But he is saying, no, this you not able to find job is given to you so that you realize your actual problem. So not finding a job is a cure, or at least a potential cure, because if I waste it, I waste it. But if it is there so that I cure my actual disease. So as Muhammad Sial was giving this practical example, by not trusting in the creator, like I guess the practical example you give was a specific case. The way I framed it is more generalized version of it. But you are being an arrogant person yourself. But to cure this, an arrogant child is being given to you, let's say. So now you're not realizing your own problem of arrogance, but you're focusing on this arrogant child problem. So this arrogance is given to you in there, the arrogant child, so that rather than trying how I would fix this child, it's given so that I fix myself. But generalizing this happens, author is putting it as heedlessness is the source, leads to not trusting the creator, but trusting myself. This is human's problem. Yes, can we give the microphone there?
Okay,
MashaAllah, very fast learner. Good.
thank you. Alhamdulillah. Wait, so your question over there was, is it necessary to view things as like diseases and ailments? I think it's easier to look at it that way, because the way that diseases work, they don't just kill you out of nowhere. Well, more often than not, right? The diseases get worse over time. And if you look at like diseases of the heart, like jealousy, and like I guess things like that, jealousy starts as one thing and then gets worse and worse over time. And without any ailments or treatment, it doesn't get any better. But the more times you take the spiritual medicine for it, then you get better over time. But let's say you stop taking your medicine, then it goes back and it keeps progressing. So if you look at, I guess, your journey with like Islam in that way, as like a disease or an ailment, the more that you expand your knowledge, the more good that you do. That's you curing yourself. The more that you think about Allah. But if you start to lessen your focus on Allah, or you start to engage in sins, then the disease starts to grow, and it makes it harder to go back and reflect on Allah, if that makes sense.
Would you like to add anything? Probably you have an answer for your own question.
But I think you answered.
Okay.
About what we consider a disease, right? Is it the, context that we find ourselves in, the physical, I can't, get good grades or find a job, or is it something else?
Yeah. So then in this regard, as we were also partially discussing last week, so there are things which on the face value, it looks like a problem, but now the author is saying that, no, it's not a problem, it's a solution. So this is how we read life as a book, which is a recurring theme in those discussions, but also it's coming from Quran. So the universe and your life is a book. And just you will read a book and books will have symbols in it, like stories in it, but you don't read a story for reading a story. The story tells you some truth behind the scenes. Likewise, something is happening in your life, you cannot find a job, but you not being able to find a job is to teach you something. Like movies are recorded to tell you a message. Nobody records movie just for the movie, just for showing you pictures. The movie has a story to tell you. So everything in the movie is going to represent something. Likewise, in your life, all these events are happening. Sometimes I get caught so much with it. How dare my friend did this to me? Like I got caught so much, I get so much angry. But actually that event was created for you to teach you something. So this is where the distinction is happening. And this is what we were pointing to in like some of the people in here were present there. Last week's Drexel discussion, Yusuf alayhi salam was taught how to interpret events, ta'wil al-ahadith. So Quran is saying that at the very beginning of Surah Yusuf, when Yusuf alayhi salam sees that dream, his father says that, oh, your creator has chosen you. And then he will teach, the creator then follows up saying that we are going to teach you interpretation of events. So the events themselves are not the ends, they are just the means. They are means to tell you a message. So your friend treating you too good or too bad is a means to tell you something. It's not the ends itself. So, and in here, the same pattern applies. You are seeing some ills or problems in your life, but actually they are not the ends themselves. They are the means to cure your actual problems, which is lack of trust in your creator and trusting yourself and your will and power. This is your main problem. There's something going on there, no? Sure? No, there's something apparently. Okay, can we take the microphone there? There's something going on. Yes. But you were not ready. You have to push more. Okay.
I don't know if we can take like everything that happens to us as a like a cure or something to learn from, because there are things that happen like all the time or like repetitively. Like for example, you get a cold. Let's consider like real diseases, you know, that also supposed to remind you of your creator. Like you get a cold a couple of times a year, even more sometimes, every time. Like I don't know, I feel like if let's say, so every time I get a cold, is this, I'm supposed to interpret this as something that is supposed to remind me of my creator? A lot of the, I don't know if this is inappropriate, but a lot of the girls here will get very bad pain every month. Like, do we need that every month to be reminded of our creator? Like to have like horrible days? I don't know. It's just like, and women get sick more than men. Do women need to be reminded of their creator more than men? Like, I'm not sure if I can take like every disease or ailment, like physical disease or ailment or pain that occurs to me or to my body as a reminder of my creator.
Very good question. Very good question. How can we answer that question though? Can we answer that question from the point of view of my incapacity to interpret them? Or shall I try to answer this question from the point of view of the sender of the messages? Like, take it this way. Quran is such a book. And if I say that every single sentence or even word of Quran has a unique message, including Surah Rahman, which repeats the same verse 26 times. And every single one of these verses, would mean something different for you, potentially. Can I say that? Or would it be, like, come on, it's the same verse 26 times, it's the same thing. Which of God's favors or your Lord's favors do you deny? That's it. Like, what's the big deal about it? 26 times, it's the same thing. Like every month, it has the same pain. Same verse 26 times, right? But you can say, I mean, if the author was me, yes. But since the author of the book is the creator, who is all-knowing, and who is creating everything differently, how do I know? Just look at this tree, for example. You would say every leaf, they have the same DNA, yet all the shapes of all the leaves are different. Like you don't find any two leaves that are identical, shape-wise, color-wise, whatever. So it looks like the author of that book, of that tree, is so knowledgeable and giving all different leaves, all different messages. To what extent am I able to understand? It's a question of my limitation or my laziness, maybe. But from the point of view of the speaker or the author, I would say potentially yes, every single verse of Quran or every single verse that is written in my life would carry such a meaning. To what extent do I get it? It's a separate question. But me not understanding it should not mean that there cannot be such a meaning. Because the meaning is really, in this case, coming from the author, not from me. To what extent I ask, I can get more answers. At least potentially, this is what it looks like. I think this is, what do you think? Seems like a more reasonable place.
To support our sister, we can also, I at least take the question as, okay, brother Sial, because Mohammed Sial, who started this train of thought, you give the answer by just saying that Allah knows everything, He loves us most, He gives us all these troubles because He wants us to get better, right? Okay, you telling me all these troubles are for something good, training, and you just saying so. Why should I take it? Why should I believe it? Right? You're not giving me any reason to believe it. You don't, explain why this is so. Like imagine somebody comes here, we ask the same question, about the cures, the sickness, etc. And he says, oh yeah, according to our mythology, the first man committed according to our mythology, the first man committed the first crime, and all these troubles are the punishment for that. So what Mohammed, I mean, I'm using your name because you were the first one to speak. How this is different?
So don't alienate brothers.
Okay. So how this is different? Like, and then our sister would say, okay, you think these are all punishments, but would you really think that the Creator punishes us all the time? But the same question, different context, like the different words. So how saying that God loves us and He wants us to improve, answer anything? That's my question.
Give an answer. Oh, you have a comment?
Yes.
maybe we should talk about the gender baraka gap. Maybe I want a reminder. Why are women giving more opportunities to remember God more than me, right? Why can't I have, something soon?
Yeah, so now both parts are unhappy. So what do we do? This guy is unhappy because he doesn't have enough troubles. And other people are angry because they have too much barakah. Okay. Okay. It's all because of you. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So any comments? Questions? So I guess just I will wrap up there wherever I was left, but please feel free to give a comment. So in the way I look at life, then I am expecting that to whatever extent, to the extent that I realize the maker, the author of this book to be wise, I will try to extract meaning from it. Like if I am talking and then I see my wife's face changing a little bit, I would say, what did I say wrong? Because she doesn't make this facial expression out of nothing. She is a wise person, and she doesn't have those like tics that just her face is just tickling. So, but my creator, seemingly everything in this existence is being purposefully done. Looking at the tree and whatnot, then looking at my life, many more things are happening. And then I ask, there must be something in here. Like he wouldn't just blink his eyes, I mean, metaphorically speaking, for nothing. And what am I going to make out of this is a thing. But of course it is like generally what we do in this case, by the way, is every day I eat food, which is another thing in my life. Do I see the specific message in every day's food? I guess this is what looks to. Which of your God's favors do you deny? Every day I deny my God's favors. Like every food is a new favor, but I deny it or I'm negligent of it. But this should not make me think that, well, maybe there's no meaning in anything, or in some things there are meaning, but it can't be everywhere. So to me, it feels like this goes against my observation that nothing in this universe is purposeless. So I wouldn't expect it to happen in my life either. But I would rather say, how can I read? As Prophet did in the cave. Like he was asked to read in the name of his Lord, but he said, I don't know how to read. Like this is a different attitude saying then there's nothing to read. Or it's all the same words. What do you want me to read? Why did you keep repeating the same words in this book, right? Like this could have been Prophet's attitude in the cave, saying that you just have written the same verse 50 times on the same page, like every month, come on. Or I would say, since you repeated it 50 times, it must be something important, but I don't see it. Could you teach me how to read? Apparently there's something missing in my perception. So it is just flipping the table. Because in a sense, I don't know, males have their own problems as well in life of different flavor. But anyways, Brother Birkan, would you like to make a comment about your own question? Since you asked the question, I assume you have an answer.
I don't have an answer, but we can talk more about it. So, I raise it because, there's an opening to newcomers to maybe talk about the way we try to approach things, especially the text from Imam Nursi. So Imam Nursi gives us a way of looking at the things in which you start from your own life and experience, that things that you can hold on, tangible things. Like I have 5 fingers, for instance, right? You start from there, you talk about what you have and build upon that, on top of that, your arguments, so that the conclusion you arrive becomes something that you can trust. But if you start from something out of your reach, God knows everything. You start from there. The idea of God and knowing everything is out of your reach. If you build your argument on top of that and say that God knows everything, hence, and God loves everything, like God loves everyone, hence whatever I have as a trouble must be a blessing. So this argument is something that you cannot trust, you cannot believe. Even if you say that I believe in that. You can repeat it. You can say that, this is a good argument, I want to trust it, etc. You can say that. But the questions like Sister Sarah asked, but I don't see everything as blessings. Has to be there. Because you didn't show me or yourself that every trouble you have is actually a blessing. Unless you show that, unless you study that, the conclusion you arrive has to stay here. Moment you leave the halakha, the religious circle, and you go to your own, the life, nobody is talking about all-knowing, all-loving God anymore. And you face a trouble, you will forget about what you said here, for sure. And instead, you will try to solve this trouble by going to your boss, asking his or her help, your parents, your family. You will strategize some games in your mind. You will say, oh, I have to do it better than this person so that my salary or my grade will be higher. You will find yourself in such a dark place again. But instead, as Imam Nursi said here in the text, if you start from your trouble, not the creator, not the one who knows everything, etc. Start from your the trouble. And then you will find the cure, he says. That's the approach. And in the text, he gave some examples how he did that. So last week, the summary of last week, because you asked for, we said, when we look at our lives and we are honest, we realize that we are on shaky grounds every moment, right? We have all these endless needs, and then we have this almost zero power to sustain these needs ourselves. Tiny, the instances of power we see in ourselves, and then we see in others as well. So what we try to do when we have a trouble, right? When I have a fight with my daughter, let's say, I try to solve it either by relying on myself, say that I'm the best father, so I know the answer. I will solve this problem, I say. I end up in a worse situation. My daughter starts fighting me back even harder. And then I say, okay, I couldn't solve it. Let me solve it through some other, people. Ask their opinions, they interfere, etc. And then it becomes even worse. This is the same with every trouble we have. Like momentarily, we think we have a solution for it. I have to find a good job because I just recently married, right? I recently find an apartment after all these troubles. Don't look at anyone, I'm just a hypothetical example, right? Now I have to find a good job that will give me good salary. Why? Because I have these social norms that I have to satisfy, right? My relationship with my wife, my future children, etc., and the friends around me, my status, right? I try to find the best job with the best salary within the context, of course. I find something and I say, okay, this is the solution. I found the solution. How? By relying on myself, my skills, and then I do a good networking, ask all these people. I get a good support letter, recommendation letter, and I cheated a bit, and I found the solution. Right? We trick ourselves. But the moment we think more, I say that, okay, it doesn't end there, because next year I will have more, let's say, the needs, higher rates of health insurance I will need, and it will not end. You will find yourself in a search for better and better job with higher and higher salary, less and less work hours, because your wife doesn't want you to work that hard either, right? And then what you going? So it doesn't end. So your seeming success leads you even more trouble. So author says, instead of doing that, the moment when you have the problem, like I have to satisfy all these needs, I need to find this good paying job. In this moment, explore what you have, in what situation you are, he says. He says, try to rely on yourself. What happens? He says, I try to look at my past, my future, my whatever, left, right, and etc., right? If you are honest to yourself, you say that, no, I don't have any power. I cannot satisfy the needs of my wife. I cannot. You will realize that. You will accept that. And then I cannot create a good, the title for myself to improve my status in the community. You will realize all this. You will realize how weak you are within every trouble, big or big, small. You will realize that, and nobody else you can trust either. Everybody else just like yourself. I told you before, probably once I told my boss, I'm sorry, Bob, like you cannot even guarantee your own salary. How do you think you will guarantee my salary? Right? So this is the situation. Your mom, as weak as you are, how do you think she will protect you? This is the reality. Right? Within the trouble, you realize the weakness of everything. So you completed the first part of La ilaha. La ilaha illallah, the first part, La ilaha. No God. This trouble taught you that. I have to find a good salary, like a good paying job. And this trouble taught you La ilaha. There is no God. You are not God. These people who call themselves boss, they are not God. You just realize that. And you continue exploring. In the text last week, the author was saying, but the light of belief, right, makes these and that, he was saying. Belief meaning looking at your life and realizing, seeing how everything in your life is given. Like all these years, you had endless needs, ever-changing, endless needs you had up until this point, up until you got married, moments, yeah, right? You had all these troubles, all these problems. For instance, before even you born, you needed some blood circulation, carrying some food for you through the placenta of your mom. You had such a need. Was it satisfied? Yes. You were born, everything is changed. Everything was changed. Now your lungs needed to be filled with the air, right? A completely new need. You didn't know anything how to do it, and etc. Your mom didn't know anything. When your mom saw you, when you were first born, when she saw you first, do you know what she thought? She was so scared. Disgusted plus scared. That's the feeling. She didn't know what to do. But the need was satisfied, provided. Then the food, then something else, then something else, then something else, then something else. All the time provided. You realize this. Nothing is God. You just learned from your trouble. But my needs being satisfied, provided all the time. Now I need to satisfy new needs. Be the good husband. I hope my wife will find me handsome. Right? These are the needs you have in your mind. And you say, okay, I'm not worried. Whenever I have a need, an actual need, it is satisfied one way or another. The reason I say one way or another, when you first born, you didn't want the air. You wanted the placenta going on continue. You were crying because you didn't like. You wanted for a specific like the sustenance. You said, no, the blood circulation should continue. But you were sad, whoever gave it, we don't know, but you were sad, no. Your needs will be satisfied in a different way now going on, like a noun. The same way, you say, okay, I apparently have a need. And if it's a real need, whoever has been sustaining me, sustaining my needs, will sustain it. That's the conclusion you arrive when you truly think about your troubles. Your troubles remind you that you've been sustained all these years. Every moment. Right? Now you completed the second part as well. Now you can say La ilaha illallah. Meaning there is no one in this universe that can satisfy my needs. And whoever been satisfying it before will satisfy. And the Allah becomes just a name for it. Through that, now your cure taught you, right? Now your cure taught you, the trouble. Your trouble taught you this, and it became a cure, a real cure. But you don't have to worry. You've been taken care of, and you will be taken care of. This is the cure you arrive.
Jazakallah khairan. So let's get back to text then and continue from where we were left last week if there's no other comments. Right? So we are on page 226. So up to here, he looked at six directions, 6 aspects, and couldn't find any solution to his problems. And these were past, future, his ancestry, the rest of the world, and whatnot. He could find no cure for that. We start with this paragraph that says, but thus, rather than receiving consolation and the feeling of familiarity, I felt only horror and fear at these 6 aspects. And apart from the faculty of will, I had nothing in my hand with which to withstand them and act in the face of them. Now he looked at outside for 6 directions. He could find nothing. But when he looks at himself, then he sees choice. He has this freedom of choice, faculty of will. This is something that we cling to. Okay, then at least I will make the right choices in life and I will figure it out. Apart from the faculty of will, I had nothing in my hand with which to withstand them and act in the face of them. So in the footnote, he says, belief gives a document for relying on an infinite power in place of power of choice, which is like the smallest indivisible particle. Indeed, belief itself is a document. Now things are starting to get a little interesting. The author is saying that on one hand, you have this option to rely on your choice, power of will, which he described as indivisible, smallest indivisible particle. If you have any idea why he calls it as such, that would be interesting to hear. But this is a very precise description of power of choice, actually. It says it is like the smallest indivisible particle. On the other hand, he puts Iman. He says Iman is at odds, if you like. But what does that mean? What are we going to understand from that? Any idea why he called it indivisible particle or power of choice? So human can realize that he doesn't have, like you lift your hand, an example we commonly give here, right? You lift your hand and you say, so many things are happening for this simple action. The muscles are moving, neurons are firing. And you can say, I don't know how to do that. Okay, there's something going on behind me. Okay. So you can say that I don't have any share of which muscle to move, which neuron to fire. Like this simple act of lifting your hand has many components. And you said, okay, moving which muscles is out of my control. I don't know which one are happening. Neurons, which one, I don't know. How does sodium potassium pump is working? I don't know. Which particles are acting in there? I don't know. You can attribute all of them to an all-knowing one. But as you divide this act into smaller pieces, you come to this very small, indivisible thing. There's this choice, and I make this choice. Like this is why he calls it as, you can give everything else to its maker, okay, because you say, I don't have a share in it. Then comes the question, how about choosing how to do it? You cannot split it any further. And then you say, oh, at least I do this one. At least I give a direction to my life with my choices. I have a say. I couldn't throw it away. This is the most smallest thing which I call as me, actually. The inner voice that speaks, this says, yeah, this is me. Like the choices, this is me. And at least I will cling to this. It's my choices. Even if it is messing up, I will mess up. Right? This is why it is so at the center. Now, author is putting this at odds with Iman. That's an interesting way of describing things. This is where things are really getting interesting. Let's see what he is saying. Let's keep reading because the topic is not that easy, actually. But the human weapon called the faculty of will both lacks power and its range is short. And it is inaccurate. It cannot create. And apart from acquiring or choosing, it can do nothing. Belief causes the faculty of will to be employed in God's name and makes it sufficient before everything it may face. Like when a soldier employs his insignificant strength on account of the state, he can perform deeds thousands of times greater than his own strength. This was the footnote. He again keeps talking about the freedom of will. It can neither penetrate the past nor discern the future. And in regard to my hopes and fears concerning these, it is of no benefits. My choice is of no benefit for my hopes and fears concerning past and future. He puts a footnote. Belief takes its reins, like the reins of choice, from the hand of the animal body and hands them over to the heart and the spirit, and may therefore penetrate the past and the future. For the sphere of life of the heart and spirit is broad. I'll keep reading a few more and then we will discuss, because the topic goes on. The arena of the faculty of will is brief present time and the passing present instant. Thus, despite all my needs and weakness, want and poverty, and my wretched state induced by the horrors and terrors arising from the six aspects, clearly written on the page of my being by the pen of power and included in my nature, were desires stretching to eternity and hopes spreading through eternity. Okay, I think we can pause here. What do you think about his description of faculty of will being the only thing at my hand, yet it is being so incapacitated? Yet at the same time, if Iman comes into the picture, that faculty of will becomes way more useful. Like with heedlessness, faculty of will is the source of my problem. With Iman, it becomes my cure. How does this happen? And for those who know the terminology, for faculty of will, he uses the term ikhtiyar, which means to choose from a given set of choices. Any idea? Yes. Can we give a microphone there?
I think, especially in the modern day, most people, in my circle at least, tends to have too many choices, whether it's in career or like even like which place to settle in. Like there's so many options. It's like everybody's telling you it's based, like you should look at what your interests are and then choose based on that, because you don't have many of the restrictions that perhaps previous generations faced. I hear that from family, I hear that from like mentors at work. But then if there's nothing beyond that given to you, then it's paralyzing to have so many choices, because I'm aware that I have a choice and I have a will, but then I'm so scared of making the wrong decision that maybe I'm like, is not making a decision an option at all? So without a guidebook, I think I find myself at a point where you are in need of a guidebook at this point, because recognizing that you will be held accountable for your actions, you don't want to make the wrong choice. But if you rely on your will to tell you what is right and what is wrong, you find yourself very confused most of the time. And you have nothing but to say, I don't know how to read, basically. And so without Iman, navigating this choice becomes very hard. Personally, I find it kind of pointless to try and find an answer, because everybody has different opinions. Even my own view of the world is constantly changing. So it kind of is a question that I feel like, or the choice is given with your will, but without Iman in the picture, I think it's futile, because most people wouldn't know. At least I don't know how to put it to good use.
If I can follow up a question to what you just said, you say you are afraid of making a wrong choice because you make a choice and it's gone. But the author is saying that with Iman, actually, the choice can penetrate, like the power of choice can penetrate to past and future as well. Like with the eye of heedlessness, yes, you make the choice and it's gone. But he says, if you give choice to the hand of Iman, then actually it's not being what he described it as. Initially, he described power of choices as powerless, it's inaccurate, it doesn't do anything other than choosing and whatnot. But then he mentioned, I'm going to reread it. Belief takes its reins, it here refers to power of choice, take its reins from the hand of the animal body, because normally my animal body makes choices, or I utilize my choices with the wishes and whims of my animal desires, and hands them over to the heart and the spirit. Now, heart and spirit is utilizing freedom of choice, and may therefore penetrate the past and the future, for the sphere of life of the heart and spirit is broad. What does this mean? Like, as if he is saying that if you utilize, if Iman comes into you, and you really understand what freedom of choice is for, and realize your role in this life, actually, in a sense, I'm going to speak a little mysterious, but time travel, sort of. Because normally you cannot change anything in the past, and you cannot make choices for future, right? You just have the moment. But he says with the lens of Iman, actually, you can make choices which goes to past and which goes to future. But what does this mean? Does this make sense?
This is bringing back something we discussed maybe a couple months ago. I either asked a question or it was a topic in the discussion of like power of will, and you were explaining that like the good thing that we do is the only right option. Like you were saying that we don't choose to do good things, that's just what comes in our nature, and we choose to do not that, which is the bad thing. So this kind of reminds me of that, of like when you use your will to do the right thing, which was what Allah intended for you to do, which is the natural thing. I think you can receive blessings from it. You can receive blessings in the future for doing what Allah like wanted you to do. You can mend mistakes that you've done in the past. Maybe that could be a take on it. Like these simple actions, or the illusion of decision to do the right thing, when you use Iman to like do the things that are right by scripture or hadith.
So
I think that it brings you.
I'll just open it up. How would you mend a mistake that you did in the past, for example?
I don't want to say it out loud because I think it's wrong, but it's like I think when you go to Hajj, your sins are like, when you do this, some of your sins are forgiven, or you do that and these things.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. How do we do that? Because it might even be you killed someone. Like people buried their daughters alive. How do they mend this mistake? There was a comment here. You had a comment, Hamza? Was on the power button.
So I'll first say my comment I had related to that, and then I'll try to answer your question after. So when I think about being able to make decisions and seeing what's right and wrong, earlier we were talking about how when the Prophet was told to read, he didn't know how to read, but when he had belief, he somehow was able to, right? In the same way, I think of it as I try to create an analogy of eyesight. Someone who doesn't wear glasses, they don't have 20/20 vision. They're partially blind, but they can partially still see a little bit. They can see. And I think of that as your nafs, how much you think that you're able to see, but then there's still that large portion where in reality, you don't actually see what's going on. And then when you have your belief, it's if you had like two pieces of fruit in front of you, for example, and you don't have your belief, they might look the same to you. One might look better than the other. You might think you're making the right decision. One might look more ripe than the other. But like when you have your belief, you might see like there were some maggots growing on or something that you otherwise wouldn't have seen or noticed until you took a bite from that fruit. So
So
like
in
that's how.
this regard, we really need to see what do we mean, how belief applies to that. Well, let's try to make it practical. Like when Sahabi were mentioning that, and when they chose Islam, they were as clean as they were born new. So it really mended their mistakes. Not only mended their mistakes, but their mistakes were converted into good deed. Yubaddilullahu sayyatim hasanatin. How come? Like, what does this mean? It was a mistake that was done in the past. They messed it up so badly. Because if I think about with the perspective that he was starting from the beginning, with heedlessness, I am the captain of this ship, and I'm going to save this ship, not sheep, ship. So, and I keep messing it up because I feel like if I turn it this way, it goes right, and if I like turn it this way and went 2 hours this way to fix it, I need to turn it back, come all the way to here, then go this way. Like it's a lot of job, right? And if you buried your daughter alive, it's gone. How are you going to bring it back? It's gone. So how is Iman, and Iman in this case, your conviction about your creator and your purpose in this existence properly, changes everything. And then burying your daughter after Iman comes into the picture becomes a cure. It can potentially become a good deed for you. Sounds a little eerie, but it becomes a good deed. How does this happen? Like in this second picture, our perspective about freedom of choice is changing because the purpose, actual description of you is changing pretty much. That's what the author is saying in here. Because initially you thought that you are capable. I can do it. I have the power. I have the choice. And I'm going to save this ship. I'm going to make a change. Just look at the vocabulary that we use in today's society. Be the change you want to see in the world. Like, what a mouthful, right? And we are aiming for raising the next generation Muslim leaders, for example. I mean, we just put Muslim in there and it becomes more acceptable. But we would like to change the society and whatnot. All good if looked at it from proper lens. But are we looking at it this Iman's lens, or we are just the same material worldview with a Muslim culture and using this terminology? Sister Zareen has a comment there, I feel like. No? No, okay. No. Yes, Sister Zaha. Yes, new people needs to learn the friction rate of our carpet, so that's okay. That's their first time.
Need to regather my thoughts.
Okay.
So when we talk about Iman as having conviction of who Allah is, to the best of our understanding, and each individual person having conviction of that level, to the degree that they're convinced of His power, and at the same time knowing how weak our will is. I feel like the only thing left in that, with that understanding, I think I tend to think, is there even a decision for me to make ultimately? Because my will is so weak. If I don't employ it, I don't even have Iman, then I feel like there's not much of a like direction to how I'm utilizing it anyway. So nothing much to talk about there. But when I have Iman, more than my, like, using that same will to make decisions on like day-to-day kinds of things. It's more so the only thing left, the only question I feel like left is, are you supplicating? In like, are you, because here it talks about employing the faculty of will in God's name, right?
Mhm.
So the only question, like when Iman comes into the picture, the only question is this instance or this experience, in this instance, are you employing your will in the name of God? For me, viewing it that way, the only question I have left to ask myself would be, is this like, am I employing my will here to supplicate?
Mhm.
If I'm looking at it from that lens, I could make quote unquote wrong choices according to other people. But if I'm employing it in God's name, that would ideally, like if I'm supplicating properly, bring me closer to my purpose in life.
Mhm.
And that is beyond time and space, I feel like, because I mean, without Iman, obviously, from an external point of view, none of this would make sense because
Yeah.
there's always one person would have a definition for this is right versus this is wrong. Another person could, and everyone can measure their choices. Even I myself can have like an understanding that this is the right choice and this is the wrong choice. But the lens of Iman, how it's shifting my view is it's, I think, changing the question altogether.
And in this regard, like a few things that we can further ask, for example, what does it mean to, I mean, the way you put it is employing my freedom of choice in the name of God. You said it's supplication, right? So this is actually an important perspective, right? So you are saying that I'm making a choice, but I am seeing my choice as nothing but making a dua. What was it the other way around? It would have been no. It is something that does make a change, does have an effect. In the other one, in the second perspective that you suggested, now it's becoming passively asking. In the first perspective, with my heedless perspective, it was an active doer. It was doing something. In both cases, we are not saying that you're not going to make any choice. You still do a choice because this is this indivisible particle, which is you pretty much. What is you is this, right? But how do you take yourself? Is it something reliable to make, create, put something into existence? Or it is a passive recipient which simply asks? Where do you see yourself? This is really the matter at the end of the day. Because to the extent that I see myself capable, I am in the first category, and I realize myself that I am unable to do anything, achieve nothing. In the second one, I'm accepting and realizing that I am needy, I am incapable, but I am being maintained. So from my maintainer, my sustainer, I am asking. This is my position. And as I'm realizing, or I am made to realize, I messed up yesterday, or 10 years ago buried my daughter. Now I am showing remorse for that, saying that I was wrong. I took it from a wrong perspective back then, and I seek forgiveness, which is again another asking. Says, since you realize your mistake, then you understand the correct answer. That was the point. So this is how wrong deed gets corrected into a good deed. Like going back to Hajj that Natalia was mentioning. Somebody goes to Hajj. Actually, this was one of the examples we took today during the discussion at Trexel. What is the sign of an accepted Hajj? They ask the Prophet, and he says, you're changing yourself after the Hajj. This is the sign of an accepted Hajj is you're different when you come back from Hajj. What is the idea? You are realizing that I was living a wrong life, and you're showing this realization during the Hajj. And accordingly, it also manifests in your life because now you're starting to make choices differently. You're looking at life from a different lens, and people say, oh, mashallah, you changed, right? So this is how, for a common person, bad deeds are being converted to good deeds. And this is something that happened in the past. So using secular terminology, you could take it as learning from your past mistakes. But the past mistakes that we are talking about in here is like unmendable mistakes. But from lens of Iman, you're saying that, oh, that person who died, yes, I was wrong. I was horribly wrong. And still I am feeling remorse for that mistake. But then your creator says, to the extent of my Iman is there, I have been in charge. Like I gave life to this person. I took love from that person. You have been involved this. You have a share for you to learn something from there. But I have a wisdom for giving death to that person. You didn't create the death in there. From your perspective, you were wrong. But I have other perspectives that I created death in there. So if you got your lesson, you are cleaned up. Leave the rest to me. Because I have a wisdom to create death for other reasons for this innocent child back then as well. If you get your parts, then you are done. Still have this remorse, if you like, in the sense that realizing and remembering your weakness and neediness and ask for forgiveness, but you got your lesson from there. So this is how things are changing with the lens of Iman. This doesn't mean that actually the words will come that you're not going to make a choice. You do make a choice, but the nature of the choice is changing from your perspective. You don't think anymore that will be the change you're going to see in the universe, in the world, with the same tone. And there was another part in here, just to highlight, we talked about it, but he talks about sphere of life of the heart and spirit. He talks about this, and then he talks about life of animal body. Apparently, he talks about different lives. You can be living a life with your animal body, which simply is chasing momentary tastes. Especially if you are wealthy and you can afford, you go to Paris for breakfast, southern Turkey for a dinner, and for lunch you go to Dubai to eat some chocolates. Like this is the type, this is the life, because your life is simply this momentary joyous life. And if you miss this opportunity, they would call you a fool. You had the money. Why didn't you go to also Japan to eat some sushi, man? Like you're wasting it, because you cannot live the moments that you wasted in such a worldview, right? But in the second worldview, it now starts talking about a life of heart and spirit. It says if you're living in the second type of life, you can go to past and fix something that you made wrong in the past. You can go to future and benefit from future again, the moments that you didn't live. Since it's supplication, you can make supplication about future. You don't have to live the moments because you have worries about future. Like many people in this room doesn't have any children, but you do see what's going on with the children in the current society. You can start making supplication from now. And it is going to be beneficial for you that you're recognizing and realizing your neediness for a non-existing child at the moment. So it's a worship. You are making a worship out of nothing. You cannot enjoy your non-existing child, but you can benefit from a non-existing, praying for a non-existing child's future, for example. Okay. Okay, so I think we can pause here. And inshallah, we can finish the rest next week. But do you have comments or questions before we finish? Is there any comments or questions? Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
Hace